Hey everybody, this is Kathy from K.dill Handmade, and I wanted to welcome you to my video tutorial today for my brand new pattern, the Rainier. The Rainier I'm calling is a sophisticated crossbody. I love a good crossbody bag, and this one I think just takes it up just a little bit to that next level, and I hope you love it as much as I do. So let me show you what Rainier looks like. This is the one that we're going to be making in the tutorial today. So it has this wide flap where it's perfect for featuring a fancy snap. You can also do a turn lock. It has a nice wide gusset, hidden strap connectors on the sides, and then on the back you have a large hidden slip pocket right there on the back side. On the inside you have this great zipper gusset to secure the width of your bag. And then you have a zipper pocket on this side, and on this side you have two vertical card slots. It all goes together really well. A really neat feature here, making it super easy to open and close your bag with just one hand. But it also has an option for adding piping. Look at this beauty. This is gorgeous. So this is vinyl cork piping, and I used contrasting red top stitching. So again, this is a turn lock here. You can add to your bag as well. And then I also use this one for featuring this strip of color right down the center. And then I did the accent here at the top as well with a flip lock on this one. So yeah, so that's the Rainier. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you love it as much as I do. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to go over everything that we're going to need to make the Rainier bag, today we'll be making the version similar to this one here without piping. There are instructions in the pattern that shows you how to add piping to this bag if you would prefer. In this particular video tutorial, we are not going to be doing the piping. So outside of your pattern, you will also need your pieces. So we have for the exterior and for the lining. For the exterior, I'm using cork. For the lining, I am using this dry oil cotton. It's organic cotton from Merchant and Mills. And this cork here I got from So Many Creations, and I will link both of those sources in the description of this video. I just wanted to show you for this one, since it is a directional fabric that I'm using, I ended up cutting the pattern piece a 3/8 of an inch longer. So basically, for example, here's the pattern piece. I folded it in half, added 3/8 of an inch to this side and cut it like that, and cut two pieces so that I could seam it in the bottom, so that when you have the finished bag, each side will be right side up. So I just wanted to note that for the gusset. You will also need your main lining pieces. So I have two of those, and that is in, again, that organic cotton. Inside you have a zipper pocket. You will have two pieces for that. There's also a slip pocket on the other side, one piece of that, and that piece is taller than it is wider. We will be creating a pocket that's like this, so you have your cards that will be standing up. So that's why this piece needs to be taller. If you're using directional fabric, just make sure it's going in the right direction. Okay, and then we're going to have, this is for our exterior back slip pocket. That is the one that is right in the back side by the flap. And then an exterior piece for that, this is where this little pocket, this little cutout here, is where that pocket will show up. You will have your exterior front piece. For the inside, your zipper pocket overlay, that is for that inside pocket. You have your top bands, and that's going to go on the top of on each side. That'll go towards the top. Of course, you have your hidden strap connectors. We are going to be making a zipper gusset, so you'll have two pieces of those in the exterior and two pieces of those in the lining. You will have your flap, and you will have one of those in your lining, one in the exterior, and I'm using just a solid black to accent this printed cork. And that should be all of the pieces. Oh, you will have one more small little piece that's going to go at the end of the zipper tab, and that's at the very end, and this will be how we secure our zipper end to our bag. Also, you will need 2 lengths of zipper, a longer and a shorter, and the measurements for those are provided in the pattern. You will have 2 D-rings of some sort. This is a little bit more of a fancy D-ring. You could also use some sort of triangle ring. And then for your strap, you will need your adjustable. So this is 1 inch here for the D-rings. And then for your strap, I'm using 1.5 inches. So my adjustable slider bar and the 2 lobster clasp are 1.5 inches. And then you will need your length of strap webbing. The last thing you will need, of course, is the zipper pulls for your zippers. Also, you will need some double cap rivets. So I use, I think these ones are a little bit smaller. I think these might be 7 millimeters. Around an 8 millimeter double cap rivet is what I recommend for this pattern. And that's all we need. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and make our strap and get that out of the way. That is one of my least favorite things. All the intro, prep work, all of that is just, it's like my least favorite. So let's get that out of the way first, right? All right, so taking your adjustable slider bar, we're going to take one end of the strap and we're going to feed it up and over that center bar, pulling that down. Now I'm using a woven canvas here for my strap, so I just fold it under. I folded it under about, let me just double check, I think it's about 1 inch. Yes, so I folded it under about 1 inch, and then I'm just going to hold it close to the other side of the strap. Now you could optionally, if you prefer, if you don't have rivets or if you prefer stitching instead, you could stitch a small box right here to secure this together. I like using rivets, so I'm going to just add a couple of rivets here for mine to secure them. Okay, so I just punched 2 holes there. And then I'm going to slide the rivet through, put the cap on that side, and same for this other one. All right, once you add the caps, you can go ahead and set your rivets. However, whatever method you have, whatever method you're using, I have table presses here, and again, I will link to, this is a Cam Snap table press, and then this is one that I got from the UK. All right, so flipping it over to the wrong side of the strap, making sure we don't twist our snap, we're going to come down to the other end. We're going to take one of our lobster clasps and slide it on so the flat side is against the wrong side of the snap. So the lobster clasp is against the front side. And then again, being careful not to twist our strap, we're going to feed it up and over the center bar again on our adjustable rectangle ring. All right, and then you can just pull that, making sure you get down to the other end, making sure it's still, nothing is twisted, you're good to go. Now we're just going to attach this end of the strap the same way. So the flat end goes on the wrong side of the strap, and then I'm just going to fold it in about 1 inch and then down, securing that raw edge inside there. And then again, I will add 2 rivets. Okay, once I have those punched, I will set those as well. And there we go. Get these little fuzzies out of the way. Okay, here's our completed strap. We can set this to the side for now. Our strap is complete. Let's move on to the next step. All right, the next thing we're going to work on is our zipper gussets. So we are going to need both of our exterior pieces and our lining pieces, as well as our longer length of zipper. Since I'm using directional fabric for my exterior, I want to flip this one around so that no matter which side of the bag I'm looking at it, it will be the right side up, so it'll be going towards the center. If I had this one, if I didn't flip it around so that this would be the bottom and then I put it on the bag, then it would be upside down when you're looking at the side of the bag. So if you're using directional fabric, just flip one so that as you're looking at it, one's right side up, one's upside down. We're going to flip all of these over to the back side, and then measuring in from one short edge, you're going to mark a line, and that measurement is provided in the pattern. So I'm not going to be giving any measurements today. If I do, it'll be very basic, but all of the measurements that we are using for this pattern are provided in the pattern instructions. And I'm going to do my best to follow step by step right with the pattern file so that you are able to find where these steps are located. Okay, what we need to do is we need to fold up the short end to meet that drawn line. So it's a very small little fold. And for this organic cotton, I can pretty much, the nature of how this fabric is, I can fold it, give it a little crease, maybe, use my nail to crease it, and it will hold it. I don't need to add a clip, so I'm not going to add a clip there. For the cork, I prefer to use some double-sided tape, so I'm going to put a strip of 1/8 inch double-sided tape just to the outside of our drawn line. And then removing the paper backing, I'm going to fold that short end up to the drawn line, press that in place, and then I will add a clip on the cork just to help hold it. Since the cork is a little stiffer, I just want to make sure it doesn't unfold on me. And the same with this side, removing the paper backing. All right, so here is all of our pieces with the folded edge all to the right side. Now we're going to take our zipper, and we need to, first I'm going to do a little singe on the ends just to help it prevent it from fraying. And then what we need to do is we need to fold one end of our zipper. We're going to separate the teeth a little bit and fold it over at a 90-degree angle. And the 90-degree angle, I will just take the edge of this and match it up with the side. So that's just how I do the measurement. I think that's probably ends up being about 1/2 inch. But just as a reference, that's how I do mine. And then secure it in place. So you can secure it with a couple stitches. Some people prefer using a lighter. I prefer using this little Tim Holtz mini stapler. The staples are small and they don't get in the way. Okay, so once you get that end turned under at 90 degrees, we're going to separate the zipper so it's in two pieces. Okay, we can set one to the side, and we can take one lining and one exterior. We're just going to work with one for right now. So the folded end is to the right side on both. We're going to take our zipper and flip it over so it is teeth side down. Now the way we want this aligned is we want to come in, and again there's a measurement in the pattern for how far you want to come in. We want the folded end at the end of the zipper gusset that doesn't have the fold. The folded end of the zipper, non-folded end of the gusset. And then your zipper tail is going to hang off the folded end. So just remember, it's opposite. Folded end here, not folded here. Folded end here, not folded here. So that should help you know where you, if your gusset is, if your zipper is lining up the right direction on your gusset. And then all we're going to do is we're going to align that top straight edge of our zipper with the edge of our gusset and clip it in place, going all the way down. Okay, and then you're going to take your lining zipper gusset, flip it over. So these are going to be right sides together. You're sandwiching your zipper in the middle. And then we're going to line it up again and clip that in place. Now you have the option, if you prefer, you could baste your zipper onto your exterior before you do this part. I typically just do it all at once, but that is personal preference. So if you prefer to baste yours first and then attach your lining, you can. Okay, so to make sure this is correct, we have the folded end of the zipper, not folded end of the gusset, all the way over here. Your tail is hanging off the folded end of the gusset. And that is correct. If that's how yours looks, that is correct. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to flip these over. So now the folded end is to the left. And with the other piece of our zipper, we're going to flip it right side down. Again, you're going to measure in according to that measurement provided in the pattern. You're going to line up your straight folded edge of your zipper, and we're going to clip it in place all the way across. Again, you can baste stitch this on first and then attach your lining piece, or you can just attach them all at once. Okay, now that both of those are clipped, you can see they look opposite, right? But that's because we still need to sew them and turn them through. Once we get that done, it's going to be like this and everything will be just right. But for this part, our zippers are opposite. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to sew according to the seam allowance. We're going to sew up the non-folded edge. We're going to sew up and straight across, stopping right here at this folded edge. And then on the other one, again, up the not folded edge, and then straight across, stopping at the folded edge. You don't want to go past, maybe stop a half a stitch to 1 stitch before you get to this folded edge, just so that we don't see those stitches from the outside once we turn it through. But for right now, again, just along the zipper and sew down that non-folded edge. Do not sew down the folded edge. Don't do that because we still need to turn it through. Okay, so this is probably one of the most trickiest parts of making this bag. So if you need to stop and record or rewind and watch this part again, feel free to. But I'm going to take these to the machine and sew along the top and the not folded edge according to the seam allowance. Then I'll be back to show how we finish this up. All right, once we get those sewn, what we need to do is clip the corners on the sewn corner. So we're just going to clip that at a diagonal. That's just going to help reduce the bulk once we turn it through, like that. Okay, and now we need to turn our zippers through so that the zippers are now on the outside, and the zipper gussets will be lining wrong side together. Wrong side together with the exterior. All right, and I need my little turning tool to help poke out that corner. There we go. All right, and then what I like to do is I just like to add some clips once I get everything pulled away nicely from the zipper. I'm just going to add some clips along this bottom edge to help hold it in place. Okay, so that's how that one looks. And we're going to do the same thing for the other one. Okay, and now you can see that once our zippers are turned through, everything is going the way that it should be. Our tails are both at the same end. You have this one, if you're looking at the bag from this way, your panel is right side up. And if you're looking at the bag from the other side, that panel is right side up. Okay, the last thing we need to do here is top stitch all the way around, even this raw edge over here. We're just going to close that up. That's going to help making attaching it to the bag later on a little easier. So just go ahead and top stitch all the way around this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once we get those stitched, top stitched all the way around, the last thing we need to do is just find and mark the centers. So I fold mine in half and then I use my scissors and make a tiny snip. Just a little, it's like a little V cut once we get it through. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's just a tiny mark so that I know where the center is. You feel free to use the same method, or if you prefer to use a little pen just to mark where that center is, you can do that, because we will need to know where the centers are in a later step. Okay, once we get that done, our zipper gusset is done for now. And let's move on to the hidden strap connectors. So both pieces of those, we're going to flip it over to the back side. We're going to, these are 2 inches wide. We're going to draw a line down the center. And then on each one, we're going to fold the long edge in to meet that center mark. So again, I'm going to add some double-sided tape here just on either side of that center line. And then removing the paper backing, I'm going to, let me just tuck these little ends in. There we go. I'm going to fold the long edge into that center line. And press that in place. I will hold a clip just for now. Use a clip. I won't hold a clip. I will use, excuse me, I will use a clip to hold that in place. And then we're going to repeat for the other hidden strap connector. Okay, there we go. So now that we have these prepped, now what we need to do is we just need to stitch down each long edge at 1/8 inch seam allowance. Once we get these top stitched, our hidden strap connectors are done for now and we can set them to the side. Okay, the next thing we're going to be working on is our back pattern assembly. So for that, we're going to need our exterior bottom back and then our exterior bottom back slip pocket pieces. So we have an exterior and a lining for that, and then we have our exterior here. So grabbing our lining piece, we are going to flip it over and lay it down so that it is right sides together with our exterior piece. There should be the same amount, so you want it centered left to right. There should be the same amount showing on either side. And then I'm just going to add a clip here because I can't clip it all the way across because that's where our little dip comes in for our pocket. So coming over to the back side of your exterior piece, you can use this as a guide. What we're going to do is we're going to sew according to the seam allowance. We're going to come down here at this angle. We're going to sew straight across this edge, and then we're going to come back up to this angle. Do not sew the top straight edges here. Only sew along this little pocket opening right here, along these 3 edges. Okay, once that is sewn, we are now going to use this exterior piece as our guide, and we are going to cut away the lining, just following that same edge. Okay, we can get rid of this little piece here. So that's how it should look. Now our lining piece mirrors that same little cutout for the pocket. Now what we want to do is come into each corner and we're just going to snip as close as we can get into that corner without cutting our stitch line. And that's going to help our corners to turn out nicely when we turn it through in the next step, which is right now. We are going to flip it so that these panels are now wrong sides together. And here I like to add some clips all along this folded edge to hold it in place. And then you're just going to push up this angled edge here. Our corner should lay nicely since we snipped into that edge, snipped into that corner. Same on this side. Adding these clips here, and then I'll just flip it over, making sure it looks right. Everything looks great from the back side. And then now what we need to do is top stitch along these three sides. So 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just top stitch along these three sides only, again, ignoring this top edge here. Okay, once you have that top stitched, it will look something like this. We're going to take it and flip it over so it is lining side up. We're going to take our remaining pocket piece here, flip it over right side down. So our lining and this exterior piece should be right sides together, and it should match up pretty closely. If you did a good job at cutting, which it looks like mine's a little bit off right here, that's okay. Everything should match up. So we're just going to clip it in place along the sides and the bottom. Okay, flipping it back over to the front, that's how it looks. This is creating our pocket here. What we're going to do now is we're just going to go back to the machine, flip our exterior out of the way. We're going to top stitch, not top stitch, just regular stitch, according to the seam allowance, down, across, all the way across the bottom, keeping your exterior out of the way as you sew, up here, and then up there. So in essence, closing up the pocket behind it. Again, do not do anything with this top edge just yet. All right, here is our completed pocket. So you can see it's nice and large on the inside, enough to fit, it's large enough to fit a phone. I think it even fits the max size phone, but I know for sure it fits, this is my phone here, and it easily fits inside. And I will show you a little bit more closely that once we get everything finished, so you can see it once it's all together. But this piece is done for the moment. What we need to do now is work on our flap before we can attach our top band to finish that side. So we're going to set that to the side for now. We're going to grab our two flap pieces. So if you are adding a decorative snap or a turn lock or something like that, here on the front you don't need to worry about doing anything. If you are adding a regular snap, you need to install the male side of your snap now. There is a placement guide located on the pattern piece, so you can use that. You will install the male side of the snap now, but if you're using the decorative snap, you don't have to do that yet. We will do that at the end. If you're doing a turn lock, don't do anything. We'll do that at the end. The only time you need to add the snap here right now is if you're using a standard snap that you won't see from the front. So you'll have 1/2 here, 1/2 on the bag. That's it. Okay, so that's the snap. If you're adding piping, there are instructions in the pattern for how and where you add your piping. This bag will not have piping, so I'm not worried about that. One thing I did want to side note is on the flap and also on the exterior gusset is where I will add some Decoville light. Depending on the type of material you use, I'm only using cork here, so Decoville light works really well. If you are using a thinner fabric, you might want to add some, like a cotton woven or a cotton canvas, you might want to add some woven interfacing like SF 101, and then add your Decoville light. If you are using a rather thick material, you might not want to, but what I like to do is I just like to feel how the flap folds without anything on it. With cork, it was too floppy. So just kind of use your guidance there, use your personal preference as to how firm you want it to be. But like I was going to say, with the gusset, I did add the Decoville light to the back as well. And that's because we're using the hidden strap connectors. I wanted it not only to give the gusset a little more structure, but also some strength for attaching those side connectors. So that is my reasoning behind adding the interface into these two pieces. As far as the rest goes, I think it's dependent on your preference and your machine's ability. I will say if you use foam, that can get rather thick, so maybe be a little bit more cautious with that. But yeah. All right, so to make the flap, we're going to take our exterior and our lining. We're going to lay them right sides together, and we're going to clip all the way around. Okay, once we have that clipped in place, we're going to sew around according to the seam allowance, just around. We're going to leave this top straight edge unsewn, and we're just going to sew around the sides, the bottom curve, and then back up to the other side. All right, once we get our flap stitched, what I will do is I will come in with my pinking shears and I will just trim around the bottom curved edge. Like that, and that's just going to help it to lay nicer when we turn our flap through. So now, once we get that done, we are ready to turn it through. If you don't have pinking shears, you could also use just your regular scissors and make little snips around the curves, like snip up to the stitch line, and that would work as well. That would look really nice. I mean, that would help it to look really nice when you turn it through. Just around those curves, because those can be a little tricky sometimes. Okay, so I'm just going to use my little turning tool just to reach in there and make sure everything is pushed out nicely. I'm going to add some clips around this curve while I know that it's all pushed out to help hold that. And then I will come in and do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Holding that down. And then just clip up each side as well. Okay, once we get that done, now what we want to do is top stitch all the way around the sides, the bottom curved edge, and then go ahead and top stitch or base stitch this closed. You just want this top open edge. We can close it up now, and then that's going to help again with attaching everything later. All right, once you get your flap top stitched all the way around, what we need to do is find the center of the straight edge. So I'm, again, just like I did on the other pieces, I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to make a tiny little snip so I know where the center is. And then grabbing our pocket piece that we just completed, we're going to do the same. So we're going to fold that in half, finding the center. You can mark it or you can snip it. And then with the pocket right side up, your flap right side down, you're going to match up those center marks. And you want to look at your pocket and make sure you should have about the same amount showing on either side. So as long as you are centered here, you can just take a ruler also, which I'm going to do in just a second here. And I'm going to measure in from each side. So I have 2 3/4 inches in from each side, so I know that my flap is perfectly centered. Okay, so Now you have the option, if you would like to baste stitch this in place, you can. Otherwise, we're going to grab one of our exterior top bands, and mine are pretty similar. I think I want this one because these two guys are kind of more centered, so I want to have this one in the front of my bag. So I'll use this one for the back, which has the little bear that's mostly centered. So I will flip it over right sides down, and I'm just going to clip that in place all the way across here. Okay, and then once you get that done, we're going to sew according to the seam allowance and then press this up, keeping everything down. So all your seam allowances and everything are going to go up. We're going to fold this up, and then we're going to top stitch along this folded edge. All right, so that is sewn on. Again, all of our seam allowances are going up towards the top. I folded this top band back, top stitched at 1/8 of an inch right along there. The flap is down so that when we fold it up, that's how it's going to look. And how cute, how cute is that with that little bear there? All right, and then when you peek in the pocket, you've got the moose looking at you. Cute. Okay, so the last thing we need to do here is find the center of our panel. So the center along the top, I'm going to make a little mark, and then I'm going to flip the flap up and do the same here along the bottom edge. And then this is going to help with attaching the gusset and all the other pieces. So finding the center there, the center there. Once you've done that, this piece is done. We can set this to the side and move on to the other side. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to install the female side of our snap. And I had gone step by step through installing the snap, only to realize that I was not recording. So I apologize for that, but there is a placement guide on your pattern piece for how far down you're going to install the snap. You're going to use the little washer to mark that spot, and then use the little slits on either side of the washer, there we go, to mark where your prongs are going to go through. Once you install that, I also will add a small square of Decoville Heavy, marking those same lines to make the slits, and then putting it over the prongs before I put the washer on. Fold the prongs out to the side, and then add a piece of duct tape to the outside to help protect from any kind of wear and tear. Now, this is for adding a regular snap or a fancy snap. If you are adding a turn lock, you will mark the spot for your turn lock, but I recommend do not install your turn lock just yet because it will make the next step a little more difficult. So if you're doing a turn lock, I would do it after the next step. What we're going to do next is take our remaining top band, flip it over so it is right sides together. We're going to clip along this top edge, and then we're going to sew along the top edge according to the seam allowance provided in the pattern instructions. The difference here is once we get that done, we are going to open it up, but we are not just going to top stitch on this top edge. We are going to butterfly this seam open, so pressing each one to its own side, and then we are going to top stitch down both sides of the center seam. Okay. So once you have that step completed, this is what it's going to look like. It is top stitched down each side of that center seam, and on the back, that's what it looks like with each of the seams pressed open, butterflied flat. Okay, now here is the time when if you are doing a turn lock, now that you have this top part done, I would recommend installing the twist part of the turn lock here. You can do that now. Once you get that done, we are going to again find the center marks on the top straight edge, and then also along the bottom edge. There we go. All right, and once you have the center marks there on that piece, we are ready to install or attach the gusset next. However, one final step for the gusset before we attach it, we have to install the hidden strap connectors. So let's go ahead and get our two side pieces out of the way for now. Grab your hidden strap connectors and your two D-rings. Now there is a placement guide in the pattern for where you want to mark your cut lines here on the back. I am going to mark my cut lines off camera and then I'll be back. The one thing I will reference or make note of is if you are doing quilting or something where you are very nervous and you don't want to cut into it and risk cutting your stitch lines, you could use a different type of strap connector. You also could take your D-ring like this and fold it sort of like a C shape, like that, and then you could install it. You could stitch a box around there or add a couple rivets to attach it there. So that is another option. That is not, the directions for that are not provided for in the pattern, but that is an option if you are nervous about doing the hidden strap connectors. But I really, if you haven't tried them before, I really recommend them because once you do them, like, they're pretty cool. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mark my lines and I'll be right back. All right, so here are the markings. Again, like I said, there are guides on the pattern pieces that you can mark that these lines with. And then what we need to do is we need to cut along these lines. So I'm just going to use my seam ripper to get the line started. And then I'm going to come in with my scissors, snip up to the corner, and then snip down on that diagonal. This part you want to be very careful with, very slow with. You don't want your lines to go farther than they're supposed to, because then you might see that cut line from the outside and it won't look good. So just go real slow when you're doing this part. Okay, so once we have those cut on either side, what we're going to do is take one of our hidden strap connectors and we're going to turn it over so that it is wrong side up, so you can see the seam here down the center. We're going to push up this little opening, this little tab, and then push our strap connector inside. So we have the little tab that's towards the top. Our strap connector's inside. We have it, I'm just going to clip it to hold it in place. We want it to be pretty much straight up and down, as straight as we can get it. That's what it looks like from the back side. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side and do these both at once. So pushing that little tab up, I'm sliding my strap connector inside, lining it flush with the top here, and clipping it in place. Okay, now we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to stitch, not on the tab, but just above the tab here on the back of the strap connector. So we want to go about stitch line to stitch line. You don't want to go past it, because then you're going to see your stitches from the outside of the bag. You don't want that. So I would start and stop right where my stitches are, my top stitching stitches, and sew straight across there. Same thing on this side, just above where this little tab is. We're going to sew just on the strap connector between those top stitching lines. All right, so I don't know if you can see the little stitch line. There it is at the back, so it's just above that little cutout. Same thing on this side. There's the stitches there. And so you just want to make sure that your tab is still free. You have not sewn on your tab because of this next step. So what you want to do is grab your D-ring. We're going to slide it on. So you want the flat side of the D-ring here. And then we're going to take this end of the tab and we're going to push it through this opening, bringing this little tab with it. So just holding it and then pushing it through to the back side. Okay, so from the front, I'm going to grab the tab that we just pushed through, and I'm going to just kind of pull it down nice and snug. And you can see you don't see that tab from the front side anymore. All you see is our little strap connector. And then we're going to flip it over. So I'm going to hold this. We're going to flip it over. And I'm holding this so it doesn't go anywhere. But now what we want to do is we want to sew on this tab as close as we can get up here. So as close as we can get right here. Because of machine feet and stuff like that, you probably will be down a little bit from that, but basically you want to just stitch straight across again. Again, trying not to go all the way to the edge, but maybe about a half stitch to a stitch in, starting and stopping. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to repeat the process for the other side. All right, and here is our little D-rings attached with our strap connectors. There you can see on the bottom side is where I stitched, and then it stitched through both strap pieces, securing that in place. Same on this side. There's my stitch line and stitch through the tab. Now the last thing I like to do here is I like to add a rivet to either side just below here. That I think is just a neat design feature, but also it helps to hold these tabs next to the gusset. So what I will do here is just come down a little bit, mark a spot to install the rivet. And the tool that I like to use for that is this one here from Jolie Lee Creations. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it is a guide for making these hidden strap connectors. But on this one side, there are stitch lines. So if I line those stitch lines up, and I usually line it right up with the fold right there, and then use that center mark, then I know that that is centered in my strap, and it's going to look good. Because I don't know about you, but I've done it before where I'm like, yeah, that looks good, that looks centered, and then I punch it and I put the rivet in and it's not centered. So this is a super handy tool to use for that, and I will link to this as well in the video descriptions. Okay, so now we're just going to, just like we did on the strap, we're going to install some rivets. All right, there we go. There are the rivets installed on our gusset. I think it looks super cute. I also think it's kind of funny that it's like right on the moose's forehead. But anyway, okay, so that is that part. The last thing we need to do here, just like we did on all the other pieces, is we need to find the center. Now, for me, it's very easy because I did the directional print. So this center seam perfectly marks my center. So if you did that, then you're in luck because yours is already done. If you didn't, just go ahead and mark that just like we did all the other ones. And then we are ready to now finally put our exteriors together. All right, so setting the gusset to the side for just a moment, we're going to take our two exterior pieces and our two zipper gusset pieces. So now thinking about which way you want your zipper to open and close is going to determine which piece goes on which side. So this is the back of the bag. Our flap will be this way. I wear mine on my right hip, so I want my zipper to open and close on this side. So to do that, it will be, this is the open and close, and we want to turn it right side down, matching up those center seams. And then we're going to clip it in place across. Okay, and then the same on this one. We should have our centers marked already, and we can just line that up. Now if you want if you wear your bag on the other side and you want yours to open the other direction, just go ahead and flip these zipper gusset pieces. Okay, there we go. Now, once we get that done, I am going to just share this measurement because this is super important. It's going to make it a lot easier when we are finishing our bag. But we are going to mark a line that is 1/2 of an inch in from either end of our zipper gusset. And this is going to be our start and stop stitch line. Okay, so once we get that done, we're going to take it to the machine, starting at the one marked line, just at 1/8 of an inch. We're going to just baste these on and stopping here at this 1/8 of an inch. Again, starting and stopping stitches at both to lock it in place. And then same thing on this one, starting and stopping between here, just to attach the zipper gussets to your exterior panels. All right, once we get those basted on, everything is looking good. And you can see what I mean when I say we're gonna flip it up. This will be in the final that you'll actually see it, but when it flips up, it is, both of them are the right side. So that was the part where I was saying that if you didn't do that, it could be upside down. Actually, I'm gonna have to fix this. I went off track. Okay, there we go. So I'm just gonna put that to the side. And then what we need to do is now attach our gusset. So flipping it over, we want our pieces right sides together, and then we're going to match up the center of our gusset with the center seam, the center of our gusset with the center of our bag. So I added a clip here, just a stronger clip to help hold it in place. And then I'm gonna come around here to the top and clip in place up here as well. Now this is where I can show you why, because the gusset is a very snug gusset. So leaving that little 1/2 inch unstitched allows us to kind of pull this away, and it gives us a lot more room to work with our gusset seam. So just a little pro tip there to help if you ever have that problem. You can just leave it open a little bit. All right, so now we're going to clip all the way down the sides and around so that we can stitch it. If you need to snip into your gusset as we're coming around the curve, you can do that slightly. Just snip within about 1/8 of an inch into the gusset to help ease it around that curve. It should fit pretty well without any clips, any little snips, but sometimes, you know, you just, depending on how you sewed everything together, if your seam allowance was exactly right, if it was a little more, a little less, you know, stuff happens. So if you do need to, and I think I'm gonna need to snip into mine just a little bit here. So I'm just making a few little snips, and that's just going to help to ease it around the corner there. Okay, so there's that side, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the side. Okay, so there we go. So that is our gusset clipped in place. Now we're going to take it to the machine with the side down towards our sewing table, gusset up. We're just going to kind of push the gusset towards the middle. We are going to sew all the way around this edge according to the seam allowance. I will also add a second row of stitching, just barely to the outside of that first row. That's going to help to give strength to our seams and also help prevent any stitches from wanting to poke through and be seen from the outside. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll take this to the machine, I'll do the 2 rows of stitching, and then I'll be back. All right, so gusset is first side is stitched on. What I will do, I did add those 2 rows of stitching like I said. What I will do here is just come in again with my pinking shears, and I'm just going to trim it back like just around that curve by about half. You know, so we used a 1/4 inch seam allowance, depending on if you added piping or not. So that might be a little different for your bag, but if you use the 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're really not trimming much back at all. You know, because there's not much to trim anyway. But just trimming in a little bit around those curves to help that when we turn it through, to help those corners stay poked out and nice and rounded. Okay, so now we need to repeat the process for the other side. So we're going to again align that center seam, and then align the top here. And align the other top edge. Okay, and then we're going to clip it in place all the way around. Again, we will snip into the seam allowance on the gusset if we need to as we're going around this curve. Okay, once we get that clipped, we're going to do the same thing. Take it to the machine, have this side flush against your machine. Now this side is a little more tricky because you've got the other side already attached, but we're going to try to push this to the center so we can sew all the way around, and adding the second row of stitching as well. All right, the second side is attached. I'm just going to tuck the flap inside of the bag, just keep it out of the way. And then again, I'm going to just use my pinking shears to trim around the curve here. And if you don't have pinking shears, you could, like we did on the flap, you could just use your scissors to add a couple snips in between there. All right, I'm just going to use my scissors too, and then trim back this bottom seam by about half. You are free to also trim back your side seam, but I would recommend leaving the top here, the full seam allowance. So for instance, if you wanted to trim up your side, you could do that, and then at about 1 inch down, just taper it out to the side. And then the reasoning for that is that it will make, when we attach our exterior and our lining, it'll make it easier on us if we have a little more fabric up there to work with. So I'll just taper off. There we go. All right. So once we get that done, our exterior is done for now. What we need to do now is work on the lining. You can, I know it's tempting, if you want to turn it through and see what it looks like, you can. Feel free to do that. Just know that you're going to have to turn it back through for our final assembly. So if you turn it through, just turn it back through for the next later on step. Otherwise, our exterior is done. We're ready to move on to the lining. All right, to start on our lining, you will need one of your full lining panels and then your slip pocket piece. Again, it is taller than it is wider. That is by design. What we want to do is we want to fold it up in half, right sides together, and I'm just going to crease it along that folded edge. I'm going to clip along the sides. And then what we need to do is we need to stitch along the sides and a little bit across the top. We need to leave a turning opening. So I'm going to stitch up the side and come in maybe 1.5 inches. I want to leave probably around 3 inches here unsewn. So stitch up the side and then stop around there. And then same, stitch up this side, come in and stop around there, leaving that turning opening. All right, once we have that stitched, that's what it looks like there. Again, this raw edge here is left open for our turning hole. Now we need to just trim these corners a bit to help keep that bulk out of the corner. That's going to give us a nice pointed corner for our pocket, which is what we want. Now the top edge, you don't have to, because this is flat here. We're not going to be turning anything through. I mean, we are turning it through, but it doesn't have the same effect as it does down here. So you do not have to trim these top corners if you don't want to. The next thing we need to do is just turn it through. Okay, once you get it turned through, we need to fold under the seam allowance here at this opening. So trying to keep it as straight across as you can, using that same seam allowance that you used when you sewed the sides and the bottom. You can adjust it. Sometimes this part is a little tricky to get the layers exactly, to get both sides of the seam allowance right exactly where it should be. Okay, so now that that is there, I'm just going to add a little clip to hold it here along the bottom so it doesn't move. And then this is the top folded edge now. We are going to top stitch just along this top folded edge from end to end. Okay, once that is top stitched there, now we need to attach it to our lining panel. So we're going to grab our lining panel, fold it in half so that we can find where the center is. And luckily this fabric holds the creases pretty well, so it's not too hard to find. I'm folding the pocket in half as well. Okay, and then opening that up, I'm going to center it. There is a measurement for how far up you want your pocket to be placed. I'm going to center those fold lines right on top of each other. And then I'm just going to use, that pin is very bent, so I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use a pin here, a straight pin, to hold it in place. If you have fabric that allows you to use straight pins, I would recommend doing that to hold it so it doesn't, twist on you or shift and get out of place, and then you have a crooked pocket. Okay, so once you have that measured up at the right measurement, everything is nice and centered and even, it's not crooked, we are going to sew around this outside edge, so attaching the pocket to the lining panel, and then we are going to sew right down that center seam. So that's going to create our two vertical card pockets. Okay, so again around each side and then straight down that center seam. Okay, once you get your card pocket sewn on, you can grab a couple business cards just to double check to make sure your sizing is right and your cards fit the way you want them to. If you need to make any sort of adjustment at this time, you can, but as long as they fit, then you're good to go. Okay, we are done with the card slot side panel for now. We can set that to the side, and let's grab our remaining pieces to make the other side of our bag. So we will need our one remaining side panel. We can set that to the side, and our two pocket pieces, our zipper overlay, and our zipper. Okay, first things first, before we forget, because we definitely don't want to forget to do this, let's go ahead and install our zipper pull on our zipper. There's nothing worse than putting your zipper pocket together only to realize you forgot to install your zipper pull. So once we have that zipper pull attached, let's go ahead and singe the ends of the zipper. That's just going to help to prevent any fraying from occurring on the ends of our zipper. And then using our two pocket pieces, we're going to take our zipper and lay it down right side up. So our pocket piece is right side up, zipper is right side up, and we're going to align the straight edge of the top long edge of our pocket with the long edge of the zipper. So just lining up those sides, we're going to clip it all the way across. And then we're going to sew across this edge at about 1/4 inch, just a little bit shy of 1/4 inch. So somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. You just want to make sure that your stitches aren't seen when you get to installing it in the zipper overlay. So just shy of 1/4 of an inch, we're just going to stitch straight across. Once we get that done, we're going to flip the zipper pocket over, grab the other side of the zipper, our remaining zipper pocket piece, aligning the straight long edge of the zipper, and attach it the same way. Okay, once you get both sides of your zipper pocket sewn onto the zipper, this is what it looks like when we open it up. We want to have our zipper up, and we are looking at the wrong sides of our pocket pieces. If we flip it over, this is the right side of the pocket piece with the wrong side of the zipper. And that's because once we open it up, that's going to be the inside of our pocket, and we want to see the inside, right? We want to see the right side. So if that's how yours looks, we're good to go. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to flatten out that zipper as much as possible. So with this type of fabric, I'm pretty lucky because it holds the fold pretty well, so it will let the zipper lay pretty flat. You could also take your zipper to the ironing machine, to the iron not machine. Just take it over to the iron. You can press it flat and that can hold it as well. If you don't have the type of material that can do that, you could also optionally just stitch along the side of your zipper, just here to the outside of your original stitch line. So you're just a fraction on the outside of your stitch line, and that's going to hold that zipper flat so that when we install it in the next step, it'll just make it a whole lot easier to center it under the zipper overlay. Okay, we can set this pocket to the side just for the moment while we prepare the side panel with the zipper overlay. So turning the zipper overlay over so that it's wrong side up, I'm just going to attach a strip of 1/8 inch double-sided tape along each long edge of the zipper overlay. And then removing the paper backing, we are going to center this overlay on the side panel. So finding the center of our side panel, I'm just going to fold it in half here, give it a quick little press to find that center mark, open it back up, and then measuring down from the top straight edge of our pocket piece is where we want to attach our zipper overlay. So the measurement is provided for in the pattern instructions. We want to mark the center right here and then center our overlay right along that measurement. Okay, once we get it to where we want it, we can just go ahead and give it a good press. That double-sided tape should hold the zipper overlay in place for us to sew it down. If you have woven labels, this is a great spot to add a woven label. So I like to add them just barely under the edge here on the zipper overlay. And then when I stitch around that, it will catch that label into the zipper overlay so it stays nice and secure in place. The other thing that I have is my little woven K.dill label, and I just think it would be a really cute spot to stick it in the side panel, in the side seam of the bag. So here. I'm just trying to figure out where I would like to put it. And actually, I think I want to move it up a little bit higher in the bag, or centered with the zipper overlay. Okay, now what we want to do is we just want to stitch a box all the way around the outside of this zipper overlay at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting and stopping. You could optionally leave long tails, pull them through to the back side and tie them off, or you could just do a couple back stitches to secure it in place. All right, once you have it stitched, this is how it looks. That inside edge is not sewn, just sewn around the outside, and then I went ahead and base stitched on my little side K.dill tab. Now what we want to do is cut out the fabric from the center of the zipper overlay. So just cutting a slit down the middle, we're going to flip it over to the back side so it is wrong side up, and then we're just going to trim this fabric away from the back side of the zipper overlay. So you want to see that back overlay, the back side of the zipper overlay, and then you're just going to trim your fabric all the way around. Be careful and go slowly so that you don't accidentally cut into your zipper overlay. If you do, you'll have to start over, and nobody wants to do that, right? So we're just going to snip it all the way around, removing that fabric from the back of the zipper overlay. And so this is how it looks from the back side. You can see the back of the zipper overlay here. And then flipping it over to the front side, you can see you don't see any fabric there on the inside of the zipper overlay. All right, now grabbing our pocket, you want to think about which way you like your zipper to open and close. If you like it to open and close to the left, make sure your zipper is oriented that way, or if you want it to the right, you can just flip it over. I like mine going to the left, so I'm going to leave mine positioned in this way here. Now to attach the zipper overlay, we're just going to lay a strip of double-sided tape along this straight edge of the zipper, kind of right on top of where our stitches are. And then removing the paper backing from both pieces of double-sided tape, we're going to take our side panel piece and center our overlay left to right. I kind of eyeball this here, just trying to make sure I have about the same amount on each side. And then I carefully flip it back and center my zipper underneath that opening. So I go slow. Sometimes it lays down perfectly the first time. Sometimes you just have to lift up the panel again and then reposition it to get it just right so that your zipper is centered top to bottom. So once you get that down, we're going to just press that in place to hold it. And then what we want to do here, the final step, is we are going to stitch around the inside of this box now. So this is going to secure our zipper pocket to our lining panel. So we're going to stitch around the inside at 1/8 of an inch. Make sure your pocket panels are still laying flat. So one is going up, one is going down. We're not stitching on those at all. They want to be away from the zipper. And then we're just going to stitch around that overlay. Okay, once you get that stitched, we are ready to close up this pocket. So flipping the panel over to the wrong side, we're going to take the upper pocket panel and fold it down so it is on top of the lower panel. These panels will be right sides together, and we're going to clip it in place along the sides. You will notice that the lower pocket panel is longer than the upper, so once we get it clipped, we're just going to separate or lift the pocket panels away from the side panel and just trim off the excess on that lower pocket piece. We can toss that extra strip to the side. We don't need it anymore. And then now what we want to do is we want to close up the sides of the pocket. So we're only going to be sewing up the sides here. We are not going to be sewing across the bottom. We are going to leave the bottom open because that will assist us later with closing up the bag. In general, we're going to be doing what I call the double flip. So for right now, we're just going to be sewing down the sides of the pocket. Starting and stopping at the top and at the bottom, you're going to pull your outside or your main lining panel away and just sew down the sides. at the seam allowance. Once you get that done, you can see how it looks here. You can open up the pocket and see that the bottom is unsewn. And that is how our pocket panel looks. Now we have our two interior side pieces completed and we are ready to attach the gusset. So what we need to do here is find the center marks of our gusset, and you can mark them with a pen or just make a little snip into them with your scissors like I am here. We also need to find the bottom of our side panels. So folding those two in half, we're just going to find the center along that bottom edge and make a little snip. And same thing on the other one. And I'm just matching that up here and making a little snip in that side as well. Okay, now we are ready to attach our gusset. So again, we are going to match up the center marks with our gusset and our side panel. So these pieces are right sides together. We're matching up the center mark, and I'm just going to add a couple clips here on either side just to help to hold that in place there. And then bringing the edge around, we're going to match up the top edge of the side, clip it in place, and then we're going to clip down the side of the gusset, attaching the gusset to the side panel. We're going to clip it all the way around, and then in this corner, again, you probably will need to add some snips right here to help ease that corner, ease that gusset around the corner. So just make a couple small snips here, maybe 1/8 of an inch up. I wouldn't go much farther than 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch if you're using a larger seam allowance. But that should help you then be able to ease that gusset corner right around the edge here of the edge of the side panel. And then once we get this one completely clipped, we are going to do the same thing to attach the other side. Okay, once our gusset is attached to our side panel, now we need to sew it together. So we're going to start at our exterior seam allowance here at the top. And we're going to stitch down for about 1 inch to 2 inches at the most at our exterior seam allowance. And then once we get down, we are going to increase to our interior seam allowance. We're going to sew all the way around and then decreasing again at the end back to our exterior seam allowance. So if you started at if your exterior was at 1/4 inch, you're going to start here at 1/4 inch and increase to 3/8 down here around the bottom. If you added piping and used 3/8 inch seam allowance, you're going to increase to 5/8 inch seam allowance. And just remember to decrease back to your exterior seam allowance right at the top of the panel. Okay, once you get that sewn on, this is what it's going to look like. And then I will come in and trim away the seam allowance here on the lining. So starting in at about 1 inch down, I kind of taper in from that side. I come in from the side and then I'll cut down and around the corners. So just cutting about half of whatever the seam allowance is that I have there, I'm just cutting about half of that away. So I'm going to continue cutting all the way around the outside, around the curves, and then up the other side until I get to about 1 inch from the top, and then I'm going to taper off the side as well. So that's how that looks there. Now what we need to do is attach our other side panel to our lining gusset, and we're going to clip it in place and do the exact same thing all the way around. However, on this one we need to leave a turning opening, so we are not going to be sewing all the way around the side. Here I'm just clipping at the top and clipping down around the side, coming to about halfway around that bottom curve. I'm going to clip into the corners, add the clips into the corners till about halfway around the curve, and then stopping there, coming around to the other side, clipping that side as well, and then stopping when I get to be around halfway down around that curve. And then only where the clips are is where I'm going to sew this panel on. Um, we are not sewing all the way around the bottom. We want to leave a nice large turning hole so that it makes turning this bag through easier. We will close up this hole in a much easier way in the final assembly. But right now, all we want to do is we just want to sew down those sides right to about halfway around the curve and then leave the entire bottom unsewn. Okay, once you get that sewn, that's how it looks. You have the bottom left unsewn again, so that's going to be our turning hole where we turn this bag through. Now the last thing I need to do here is just trim up that seam allowance again. So just cutting back about half, only along where I stitched, and then tapering off about an inch from the top because I want to leave the full seam allowance there at the top, and that's going to help to align our exterior and our lining panel a lot easier in the next when we put this together. So make sure you taper off there at the top, just trimming away the seam allowance along the side stitched edges. Okay, now that we have that done, we are ready to put the lining and the exterior together. So we want our exterior to be right side out, and we want our lining to be, sorry, we want our exterior to be wrong side out and our lining to be right side out. So turn your lining through so it is right side out. And then thinking about which side you want the pocket to be, if you want it to be towards the back of the bag or towards the front of the bag. I consider the back of the bag to be, I like my pocket to be on the back of the bag, and that's the side that has the flap on it. So I'm going to align my lining so that the pocket side is against the flap side. And I'm going to insert my lining inside of the exterior. The card slots are against the side with the snap. And then I'm just going to align the side seams. So all four side seams, two on each side, I'm going to align those first, butterfly the seams open, and then I'm going to clip in place. And then coming over to the next seam, I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to continue clipping all the way around, matching up the side seams first, and then clipping around the rest of the bag. All right, so once we get everything clipped together, this is how it's looking. Everything should be tucked inside of the bag. So our pockets, our flap, the zipper overlay, everything is inside of the bag. So just your lining and your exterior are matching up. Once we have that clipped in place and ready to go, we're going to sew all the way around the top edge of this bag at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that sewn, we are ready to turn it through. So reaching inside of our bag, we're going to pull the lining all the way out, and then reaching in the large opening in the side of the base of the lining panel, we are going to just now turn the entire bag through. So working slowly, take your time. The large opening should make it a lot easier. So just go ahead and pull everything through. Tuck your lining inside of your bag, see how it fits. And then what I like to do is add a couple clips here at the side just to help hold that in place. I'll add a couple clips here, and then I'll add a couple clips to the other side. Okay, now that everything is clipped and in place, what we need to do is we need to top stitch this bag. So you can top stitch from the inside of the bag. I prefer top stitching from the outside. We're going to stitch right along this folded edge here. If you tried top stitching from the inside, it would just be a little trickier. So I always recommend turning the bag through. I know we're turning it through again. But for me, I like it better because I can see where the exact top stitching is going to go. Whereas if I was working from the lining side, I wouldn't be able to see that it was exactly where I wanted it to be. And if it's off a little bit on the inside on my lining panel, that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. So I'll just turn the bag right side in, so or inside out, however you want to say that. And then we're going to lay it against the sewing table, pull the zipper gusset up and out of the way so your lining and exterior are away from the zipper gusset. And then we're just top stitching right here along this edge all the way around at 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now that we have that top stitched, we are ready to turn it back through. Yes, I know, one more time. I promise this is the last time we are turning this bag through. So we're going to push it out so that everything is the way it should be again, right side out, lining side in. Just work it around and make sure you push out all of those corners. You can see how your lining fits. Now what we need to do is close up the opening in our base and in our pocket. So opening up your pocket, open up the zipper, and then you're going to pull your pocket panel up, and then reaching into the hole of the pocket, you're going to reach in and grab that opening in your lining. So once you grab that opening, you're going to pull it up and out of your zipper pocket opening. So I know it's it's all kind of tight and twisted a little bit. You do have to work it, but once you pull that lining out of your pocket, you should be able to just, go little by little, clip it in place along that bottom opening. You're going to clip it in place all the way across. It should line up pretty easily for you. And then once you get that clipped all the way across, we are going to sew across the bottom edge or the clipped edge according to the seam allowance that we were using for our lining. So starting right there where your stitch line stopped, we're going to sew straight across to the other side, meeting the stitch line at the other side, and that will close up the opening in our lining. Okay, once you have that sewn all the way across, what I will do is now come back and trim that seam allowance back by half. So that's just finishing off like what we weren't able to do when we were putting it together earlier because we had that opening there, obviously, right? So now we just trim off that seam allowance, we trim it back by about half, and then once it's all trimmed, we are ready to push our lining panel back inside of our zipper pocket. So pushing it all the way in, and then we should be able to straighten out our lining pretty nicely there. Now we need to close up the opening in our zipper pocket. So what we need to do is just pull the pocket out, and I did notice that I had a few stitches that came loose here, so I'm going to have to tack that back down. But what we want to do is fold under the edge, the bottom open edge of our pocket. So folding it under by about 1/4 inch to 1/2 of an inch. Typically, I'll just use my fingers to grab it on the ends like this here and then pull it out straight and see where it lands. It usually lands somewhere around 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch. So just fold it under by about that much, straight across, making sure that each of your panel pieces are lining up correctly. And then once you get the seams right, once you get everything looking the way you want it to, go ahead and add a couple clips here to hold this in place, and then we will sew across the bottom edge of this pocket panel. We will sew across at about somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/16 of an inch. So you want to get as close as you can to the edge, but still catch both panels in your stitches. So that's somewhere around 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just sew all the way across, back stitching, doing a couple back stitching stitches at the beginning and end to lock your threads in place. And then once you get that stitched, go ahead and tuck your zipper pocket back inside of your zipper. You can close that up, and then as you can see here, this is how your finished item will look. Your finished bag, your finished lining. We're almost done. What we need to do next is now we need to install the zipper pull onto the zipper. So grab your remaining zipper pull, install it on the zipper, and we'll see how long it takes here for me to get the zipper tape even with my zipper pull. Okay, that wasn't too bad actually. Now the last thing we need to do here is we need to attach our zipper end tab to the end of our zipper. How that's going to go is we're just going to basically fold it in half right here over the end of our zipper tail. So what I like to do is add some double-sided tape to the inside or to the wrong side of my zipper tab. And that's going to help to just hold it in place until I can get it over to the machine and get it stitched down. So I'll just make a little X here, removing the paper backing on the one side so that it doesn't get stuck to the other side, and then removing the paper backing on that side. And then I'm just going to take it to the zipper tail, center it left to right, so there should be a little bit of overhang on the zipper tab. So the zipper, it's a little bit wider than the zipper. I'm going to position it at about center and then just fold the tab up to the other end, pressing that in place. Now what we need to do is secure the zipper tail. So you can stitch a little box here around the outside edge. All right, once we have that stitched on, now what we need to do is set some rivets. So we're going to make some little rivet holes here in the side. This is how we're going to attach our zipper tail to our bag. So I've already marked the spots, and the measurements for that are provided in the pattern. And this is where I'm just making the rivet holes in the tab. And then once I make those rivet holes, I'm going to use that tail as a template for where to mark on the exterior of the bag. So here, this is how it's going to go inside the bag here, but I'm going to use it on the outside of the bag, like I said, as the template so that I can mark where those holes are supposed to be. So I'm just going to center that zipper tail over the side of the bag, and then using that as a template, I'm going to just mark through those holes onto the exterior of the bag so that I know where I need to punch the holes. Now this part can be a little tricky because you kind of have to flatten out your bag. So if you have one of the handheld hole punches, it'll probably work a little bit easier, but I'm just going to use my table press here, and I'm going to punch a hole on each of those marked spots. So that's how that looks. We're going to take the tail and tuck it inside of the bag. This is how it looks from the inside. We now need to grab some rivets, and we're going to set this tail, this zipper tab tail, on the inside of our bag. So grabbing one of the rivets with a post, we're going to push it through the opening on the zipper tail, and then push it through the opening on the bag. Go ahead and add your other side of the double cap rivet onto that, and then same thing with the other hole, pushing it through that hole and then all the way through the side of the bag, putting that one on as well. That's how it looks there on the side with our two rivets. And now we need to just go ahead and set them. So whatever method you have, if you have the table press, this one is from Cam Snaps, you can use that. Or if you have the kind that you have to manually set, just go ahead and set your rivets. And then this is how it looks once it's done. Trying to get all my stuff out of the way here. And what I like about having it set like this on the inside, it's being held. You don't really see it from the outside, but it makes it easy for you to open and close your bag with just one hand. So I think that's a kind of a neat design feature, if I do say so myself, to add it to the side, because it's very frustrating if you're trying to open your bag and you have to hold the zipper tail too. All right, now the last thing we need to do here is figure out where we want our snap placement to be on the flap, the snap or the turn lock. So what I like to do is I want to make sure my flap fits nicely on my bag. I don't want it to be up too high and there's a big gap, and I don't want to pull it down too far where it kind of squishes the bag. So I make sure the bag is laying nicely, just kind of filled out nicely, and then I pull the flap down so it is like snug but not too snug. And then I will feel where the snap is under the flap and make a little mark on my lining. And then coming from the inside, or looking at the flap from the inside, what I'll do is I'll make sure that the mark that I made is centered on the flap. And I'm just going to darken the circle there a little bit so it's a little easier to see. And then here what I'm using is what I call a fancy snap. This snap I got from Natural Nerd, and I will link to that in the pattern notes. So with this style of snap cover, with the fancy snap cover, what we need to do is remove the screws from the back side of the snap. So separating the snap into its two parts, we're going to take the screws and put them somewhere safe where we won't lose them and they won't accidentally get knocked off the table. And then we're going to take the flat side of the snap, or the back side of the snap cover. We're going to place it down centered. There's a hole on the back of the snap. We're going to center it over that hole that we just drew. And then marking the side slit lines, that's where the prongs on the snap are going to go through. And then you also want to mark where the screw holes are. Okay, once you get everything marked on your flap, what we need to do now is to um, do the slits and make the holes. So I'm just going to use my table press here to hole punch where the 3 screw holes should be. And then using my seam ripper, I'm going to slowly and carefully cut the 2 slits for the snap. So just punching into one end of the line here and then carefully going up just a little bit to make that small slit. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Okay, and then here what we need to do is put our snap through the holes on the fancy snap cover. So this is the male side of the snap. We're going to put it through here and then push those prongs through the little slits that you made on the flap. Once you get those through, go ahead and grab your washer, put those over the prongs as well, and then you can fold your prongs to the outside or the inside. I prefer pushing them to the outside, but go ahead and just push them over here. We're not using a piece of Decaville Heavy since we have the metal of the hardware that should help with strength. And we also, of course, are going through cork, Decaville Light, and then your lining piece. So once you get that done, what we need to do is install the front of the snap. So flipping it back over to the back side, we want to try to match up those holes with the front and back pieces, and then go ahead and drop a screw in there, and then hopefully you lined it up correctly. And I might have to adjust mine a little bit here. It looks like, yep, mine is a little bit off, so let me make this little adjustment. And then putting that screw in, and then go ahead and complete the process for attaching the remaining 2 screws. All right, and once you get that done, you can flip it over. Your snap is completed and installed. You can snap it to the front of your bag and see how it looks, and it looks so cute. I love this little mushroom snap on this kind of woodland style, woodland creature bag. So again, inside your bag, you have the zipper pocket on the one side. You have the 2 card slots on the other side, and I'm just gonna tuck my little cards in there. The lining fits nicely around the gusset, around the bottom, and then snapping our cover, our flap back in place. The last thing we need to do here is to attach our strap. So go ahead and grab your strap, clip it to the side D-rings, and then we can see what our finished bag looks like. All right, here is our finished bag. Let me just push my stuff out of the way a little bit here so we can see the bag a little better. It's so cute. I just love how this bag turned out. I love the style of it. I think it all um, came together really nicely and looks great. Also on the back side, let me just show you one more time how the slip pocket on the back will fit a phone. So I'm grabbing my phone here. I have the iPhone 16. I think it's a 16. It fits perfectly inside that little pocket. And that's it. Our Rainier is done. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe and hit that little notification bell so that you know whenever I drop a new video on my channel. And again, thank you so much for joining me today for this video tutorial. I hope you love Rainier as much as I do. When you make one, if you do, hopefully you make more than one, please share them in my group because I love to see what you make. And yeah, I hope you guys just have a fantastic day. I hope you have fun sewing, and I'll catch you on the next video.